Next on the agenda is to bring up Marge. You've heard a little bit from Marge already, but she's going to talk a little bit about some new features within LearningWell magazine, as well as give us a chance to break the ice in some.
I was going to say, I thought I was running a fun icebreaker.
You were running a fun icebreaker. This is exactly right.
And I'm actually going to ask my friend, Domenico Grasso, Chancellor Grasso from the University of Michigan Dearborn, to join me in this exercise. So I'm joking that this is a fun exercise, I think, but it is also, I think, very sort of instructive about the sort of the undertones that we have learned from asking this question. So I'll back up. You may have remembered when in the information that Dana had sent you, she asked a question, and many of you in this room have given your responses to. It was based on an idea that we had at the editorial board meeting at LearningWell about asking something, the same question of a number of different individuals through in diverse sectors of industry on what person or experience in college most influenced you as a human being. So it seems like a very simple question, but it's almost this magical question, because we found the answers to that are incredibly interesting, and again, tied to a lot of what I think the Coalition for Transformational Education is about. So I asked Chancellor to come and join me in this. The idea for LearningWell magazine is that we're kicking this off in January, and we're asking, as I said, a lot of diverse individuals. Anyone from one of our board members on the editorial board, Nicola Blake, who is an immigrant from Jamaica and has a PhD in clinical psychology. She's an administrator at CUNY. What influenced her? All the way through to J.D. Vance. Maybe Elon Musk. No. So in terms of the magazine, you're going to see a lot of different voices, but we thought it would be fun if we pulled some of what you guys had responded to. And I'm just, disclaimer, I'm going to put people on the spot. I hope that's okay, because we did get some really interesting responses. So I'm going to start us off by asking Chancellor Grasso to answer that question.
Thank you, Marjorie. And let me just say that I was asked to do this a day or two ago, so I was not necessarily well prepared for this. But I just want to contextualize this for a moment before we go around the room and answer this, because years ago there was a concept at universities and at prep schools, private schools, that those institutions were in loco parentis, right? They were serving as the local parents of the students, and there was trust in those institutions that those students were being taken care of, and that started to erode. And then there was the advent of helicopter parents, because they didn't trust the institution any longer to take care of the parents, and that gave way to bulldozer parents, right, that came in and had their own way with whatever was going on here. But I think that we should really reflect on the trajectory that has gotten us to this point, and why that Gallup poll with that criteria of what is influential, because there was, whether it was right or wrong, there was a concept in the past that the institution was there to take care of the students. And I also want to just talk about, can I talk about that?
Go.
Okay, since I have the microphone, I do want to just talk about the increase of the role of contingent faculty. And I don't think we can talk about any of this without that. And let me just say my perception of how that came about. So if you are at a school and I was at Smith College, which is a private institution, Bucknell, similar, and there are many other institutions, you know how many students are coming in every year, and you have a tenure and tenure-track faculty to serve them. And they hire lecturers on occasion to either fill a niche or to deal with someone who's on sabbatical or on leave. But at public universities, there's fluctuation in the student body. And the contingent faculty came in to try to accommodate that, because you can hire as enrollment goes up, and you can let them go as enrollment goes down. but then that transformed into a sense of entitlement among the contingent faculty. And they became a more important component of the teaching portfolio. And now at many, many institutions that are state, over 50% of the student credit hours are taught now by contingent faculty members. So when we're talking about success of the students, and you have a faculty that does not feel that they're respected, that is at risk, then it becomes, from a management perspective, and that's where I am right now, it becomes a difficult thing to try to accommodate this unless you're at a private school. So I just wanted to layer another component on everything that we're talking about here, because we're coming at this from different perspectives. Privates are very different because they don't have as large a contingent faculty that they have to deal with. State schools have a very large contingent faculty that has to accommodate this. So I just wanted to say that. And now to answer the question that I was originally asked.
Thank you.
And I've done media interviews, so I always answer the question I want to answer. But I will just say that my experience was not as robust as some of the ones that we read about. There were many people who could point to individual experiences. I came from a time where the thinking was that, even though it was in loco parentis kind of mentality, that you were privileged to be here and you were supposed to bend a knee at the altar of the faculty member, and that they did not have necessarily responsibility to your personal well-being, that you were there to learn from them on high. So I did not have this experience. However, I did play sports in college, and I was in ROTC in college, and both of those gave me a sense of community. And that was one of the things that really, I think I can definitely, especially the military, sports always does that, but the military experience really, I can trace my personal character development, discipline, and success back to that. And even after, when I actually served on active duty, it was very, very formative in my personal development. So I will end there, and I'll turn it back over.
So there was a reason I asked him to do this. Not only was that a great answer, but I do think that the Chancellor, you have been such an exemplary model for this kind of education at your very unique and important institution. So thank you for all you do. So without giving away too much about the themes here, and I'm going to call on folks who have brought us some really interesting stories. One of the things that we just learned from this exercise, and again, we'll learn more when we actually run this in the magazine, are the common themes related to that question. And some of it is a bit of a validation for what we're doing right here, because you couldn't have scripted this better when you think about what is it that influenced you. But some interesting and surprising answers as well. So without giving out too much, the themes that we've been seeing, not surprisingly, are mentors, service to others, interestingly, what you don't want to end up doing, something that you learned in college. And another one that resonated, stepping out of your comfort zone. So, but I want to give everybody here a chance to really tell the story in the first person. So the first theme, or one of the additional themes, and I don't know if I mentioned it, sort of came up, is this idea of agency, which is obviously one of our biggies. And I thought I would ask Andrew Knight from WashU to talk a little bit about his experience in Spain that involved traveling alone to a rural part to teach English in a remote camp.
Wow, you really are cold calling people.
I know. I did it to him. I'm doing it to you.
I'm like feeling relieved about what I wrote, very much so. But thanks for the invitation. I'm Andrew Knight from Washington University in St. Louis, and the experience that was so formative for me, I grew up in rural Ohio, and when I was a junior, I was studying at the University of Dayton and heard about opportunities to get small seed grants to pursue independent learning projects. And thought to myself that it would be interesting and meaningful to go outside of the country for the first time and explore a new kind of part of myself, but also I was studying Spanish at the time, and so to have an opportunity to actually immerse myself in a culture. And so I secured some of these small grants and just had to discover opportunities. There wasn't some set program that I was joining. I found a school that ran a summer camp in a rural part of Spain, and wrote to these folks, and with the help of a mentor, was able to get in contact with someone who ran this school. No one spoke English. My Spanish wasn't great. And so I found myself in the airport with the only description that I would have a guitar case. And so a woman comes up, picks me up, we get into a car. We don't speak to each other whatsoever. And only upon this 3-hour drive, ending up in a rural part of Spain, do we learn that I know a little Spanish, and we could have spoken on the way. But then I ended up spending a couple of months in Spain, teaching English in a rural part of Spain. And for me, I think it really highlighted, number one, instilled a sense of efficacy that I could discover and create interesting opportunities for myself in my life, but also the importance of help, people who could enable that journey, and part of that was through funding that I received, and then part of that also was through mentors who could help put me in touch with others. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So another theme, a huge one, obviously, is relationships. And as Domenico said, they didn't always come from formal relationships with faculty, but also from teammates and peers. So I'm going to call on my table mate, Maria Galli Stampino, to talk a little bit about, this is fun. This is really fun to surprise people. Her experience with her great group of peers.
Yes, cold calling. And picture taking. Do not send it around the office. She's my boss. Oh, great. So I did not do my undergraduate in the United States. I did it in my native Italy, where the bar for entering is very, very low, with the exception of medicine, essentially. And so I started in modern languages, not knowing literally anybody on campus. I was a commuter student, like most students end up being in Italy. And the schedule was not built around the student. The schedule was built around the faculty. Come to find out, the University of Miami, it's kind of the same way. And all of us I was studying languages, and so some of us were doing English and French, and some of us were doing French and Russian. So it was a mess. But you have to go to class, because how are you going to learn languages otherwise? And very quickly, I was very lucky to develop a group of peers, lost just like me. Thank God, we're all lost together, who figured out that our schedule were complementary. And so minimally, we could share notes. So that was, survival 101. That led to a group of people with whom we could clarify things, we could prepare for exams, and a sense of healthy competition, right? So not, I'm going to pass my exam and I hope that everybody else doesn't, but let's let the rising tide. That really, those of us who were part of this group, all 7 or 8 of us, we all graduated quickly, because in Italy, that's another thing, it's not at the end of the semester there's a final exam and you get a grade. At the end of the year, you start preparing for your exams and you take the exam when you feel ready for it. Right? And just imagine 19-year-olds doing that. And so we all graduated relatively quickly. I would not have been able to do it by myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I do want to call on some folks who have had experiences with faculty members. And maybe a couple. Bill Gaudelli from Lehigh. I know. I am going to be the most unpopular person at this meeting.
What did I write?
Identified me as a student with potential who needed help with writing. She made all the difference in my success.
Yeah, I remember it vividly. So I was a student from South Jersey. Those of you that know the geography of New Jersey, that the social capital is in the north, not in the south. And I was at the flagship, Rutgers, first gen, and did fairly well as a high school student, but realized very quickly I was way out of my league among these kids from North Jersey. So long story short, went to political science, took a course with a faculty member who was adjunct, I believe, looking back on it. I know she was because she was teaching Friday morning at 8:30 a.m. And so she was an adjunct. And she pulled me aside after the first assignment. She's like, "You're really smart, but you don't know how to write." Very bluntly. And I was like, whoa, shocking. She's found me out. So I failed the first assignment. I was on a full scholarship. I had to get a 3.5 to keep that scholarship. I was in danger of losing it very quickly. She pulled me in and she's like, come to my office hours for the next 3 weeks and I'll get you to a better place. She made all the difference. So I've looked for her. I cannot find her. Linda Hartley is her name. Can't find her, but wherever she is, she did a wonderful thing. So.
Great story. Thank you for sharing that. I know do you have time for maybe 2 more? I could go on all day with this. I love this. Sticking with faculty mentors, Kevin Kowaleski, ASU. You were a very, very good respondent. I see that you have 3 different answers. If you could focus on your faculty mentor.
Okay, which one?
Yeah, professor held a monthly dinner.
Yes. Okay, I'll tell that story, and I'll take a page out of your book, and I'll tell the story I want to tell. Okay, so we had a professor. So I consider myself my whole life to be very, very smart person adjacent. I found out my first year at college that one night all my friends were gone, and I was like, where'd everybody go? And they were all full scholarship students. And they had gone to this professor's house for dinner. And so when I realized that all my friends are the smart ones, I was like, can I come? And so every Sunday, this professor and her husband opened their house to us, cooked dinner, and it was all through the year. While I was there, I met a really good friend, Jimmy, who was a year ahead of me. And I'm going to tell a similar story as Andrew about study abroad or service abroad. Jimmy was somebody I just looked up to, peer mentor, and was a year ahead of me. And at one of these dinners said, Kevin, why don't you come with me next year? We're going to go to South Africa and do a service project. And I love this guy. So I was like, yeah, I'll go. Realized I didn't have any money to do it. So this was pre-Kickstarter. I did an old school version of Kickstarter fundraising for it. So I learned some self-agency. While I was there, I realized that it was a really uncomfortable thing to be doing, helping out in South Africa. We were at an AIDS orphanage, and I just was uncomfortable emotionally with the experience. And I became the documentarian of the trip and realized that I had a skill in communicating about what I was experiencing. That's what I do now at ASU. I lead communications for the provost office. And then when we got back, we took all of that raw material from our trip and pitched to the university that the university needs to have a service abroad, not just a study abroad component. And that was the catalyst that launched a whole department for the university. So
That's awesome. I'm loving this pattern of just actually not answering the question, but adding very interesting stories. No, I'm kidding. I actually am. I'm not kidding. I think it's great. I think. Oh, did we lose Zoe? I was going to call on Zoe because she had an interesting. Talk about putting someone on the spot. So I'd mentioned earlier the importance of experiential learning on figuring out what you don't want to do. And actually, one of our steering committee members talks about this a lot, Clayton Spencer, and Purposeful Work at Bates. Part of what they do is sort of eliminating, the kinds of work that you don't want to do. So I was calling on you, Zoe, here you are. I wondered if you could talk about. Talk a little bit about your answer.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So I did an undergraduate internship at what was called Witness Aid. It was a part of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and it was victim services really. And I intended to do that because I wanted to be a lawyer. That was my thing when I was thinking about a career, and. So I did the night shift. So my shift started at something like 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and it went until 11. And first of all, there weren't that many staff there, so I had more of a role than I probably should have. And what was striking was, I was there to collect their information and tell them about the next court date and tell them about their meeting with the assistant district attorney and, gather any. But what I was finding is that they were coming in with, their young children at 11 o'clock with no money to get home, and they were hungry, and the children didn't have any, the right clothes on, and so that was really eye-opening. And some of them, I had to call to remind them that they were a victim of a crime. Like they had been victims of crime so often that they didn't even know which case I was talking about. And so these were things that I didn't expect to be impacted by, but I realized that really what we were dealing with were the social systems were failing these people. So it was less about the crime committed against them and more about how they got themselves into those situations to begin with, and frankly, what we were not doing to serve them so that they could avoid those situations. So I went into social work, and I found meaning and purpose in my life since. So that really, and this is all true. Like I didn't sort of doctor it to fit your question. This actually happened in an undergraduate course with an experiential learning component, and it changed the trajectory of my life. So.
Right. So it wasn't so much finding out what you don't want to do. I think the moral of this story is having an experience that led you to something else. That was great. And boy, did it. So as you know, Zoe is head of well-being at NYU. Do we have time for an? Okay, great. So I'm not going to look at my notes anymore. Does anyone else want to share their story about who or what experience or person in college most influenced your development as a human being? I know there's a lot of good stories out there.
I'll do one, Margie, if it's all right.
You go, Archie.
So maybe like a lot of folks, and I've seen this in my students, they need somebody to tell them what they're capable of doing is a really important aspect. So I went to college, and all I wanted to do was graduate and get a job. But I had a faculty member, and I had taken her for a couple of courses, and she saw something in me that I did not see in myself and was willing during office hours to tell me what she thought I was capable of doing. And I think that that was really powerful because I did not see that in who I thought I was, right? That was not my identity, and that was not. And so through that, she got me to try other things that weren't as comfortable as what I was originally doing. And I always tell all the students I ever taught, if you don't like my class, you can blame her because she's the one who took me on this path. But I think it's really important for us, because I've then discovered as a faculty member, so many of our students don't also, especially if they've not been in higher ed and that's not been their experience, they don't know what is out there. And that is really our responsibility as mentors, to be able to help them understand you can do this other thing that you did not think you can do. And I think that that's something that has been amazingly transformative for me, and I think it's something that we can easily transform for a large number of students.
Thank you so much. I think we're moving on to the next agenda item, unless anyone else wants to share. This is fun. Please.
Thank you. So I would say in my experience, I was an engineering major, Northeastern University, many, many moons ago. And unfortunately, the adults in the room were not my go-to. They were the ones who told me that I could not do it, that I should not be there. Why am I here? Go home to your mother, be a nurse, be a teacher, et cetera, et cetera. So my peers were my mentors. There were a bunch of women, black women, who started an engineering sorority at Northeastern University at the time that I was a freshman. And they scooped me up along with other freshmen who were there, and they became our, our mothers, our teachers, our mentors, et cetera. And always seeing them be successful, said, okay, if they can do this and I can do this. But they were it. My mother did not want me to be a part of a sorority, because sororities are, whatever we think they are. But this was the group that really got me to be where I am, and those are still my friends and my mentors to this day. So it was more of the peers in my situation.
Wonderful. So I will close there. Just want to say a huge thank you to everybody for sharing your stories. It's not always easy to do. It is so important to tell stories, of course. That's something, obviously, we care about a lot at LearningWell. So thank you so much.